Before you MMA fans hit me with the auto thumbs down, listen to what I got to say first, and then you may agree. Before I get started, Ben, I just want to say this. You have nothing to be sorry for. You didn't let anybody down. You did more than what most would do. So don't feel bad that you lost a fight, because at the end of the day, there has to be a winner and there has to be a loser. Unfortunately for you, you just happened to come up on the short end of the stick this time. But you didn't make a bad account of yourself. Even though they said you were knocked out, I felt it was an early stoppage, and you showed heart by getting back up. This is the title right here. Sad state of MMA. 353,000, 213,000, 263,000. These are the highest purses a guy who went 19-2 in MMA ever made. Ever made. Highest purses ever. 19-2. When he first came to the UFC, he was 18-0, got his 19th win, and then he had 2 more fights that he lost. Now, this is a guy who has amazing wrestling background, a 2-time champion and 2 different, I guess you would call them organizations, companies. I'm not quite sure what MMA refers to, what we would call sanctioning bodies for them, but he had 2 world titles with 2 different organizations/companies. And this is his highest pay. Now look at what he made for the Jake Paul fight. CBS reported that he made $500,000, which is more than he made in any UFC fight. And I heard Ben Askren on an interview saying that he was going to make $1 million. So if he truly makes $1 million, he made more in one fight than he made in all 3 of his UFC fights, which would have been around 800 and something thousand. Ridiculous. Ridiculous. How can this man make more in one fight than he made in his entire 3 fights in the UFC, which is supposed to be the cream of the crop, supposed to be where the best fighters go, where they should have the biggest upside? You know what's even crazier? John Jones's biggest payday, his biggest purse was $580,000. That's it. Look at this. Talking about the most dominant guy in MMA, arguably, and if he was in boxing, he would be making Canelo, Anthony Joshua type money. Insane. Oh, Jake Paul versus Ben Askren. Ben Askren, this is no disrespect to you, but this is where the critique has to come and where the breakdown has to go. So I'm going to play the video that I played earlier so y'all can look at it as I say it. Okay, this is simple boxing right here. Jake jabs the guard, brings the hand down, and then comes over the top with a straight. In this case, the straight kind of looked like a hook straight. Not the cleanest punch, but still precision punching on where he was trying to land, which looked to be about the temple on Ben Askren. Now, this is a simple boxing technique. You use your jab, to break the guard, either by splitting it or moving the hand down to open up the face. Now watch. Boom. See how the hand's down from the face? That was after the splitting of the guard. And then he comes immediately because that reaction time is on. See, this is the thing about it. And I mean no disrespect to Ben Askren. While you were claiming that he was a pretend fighter, in all actuality, Jay took it serious. He was a real fighter and you were a pretend boxer. You didn't take it serious. I could tell by your mannerism. I could tell that the last thing you thought was Jake Paul could beat you. However, this is not MMA. This is not a sport to where you can get beat up on your feet, grab and take somebody down to save yourself. You have to rely on your hands. To the MMA fans who are trying to say that, oh, Jake Paul just picked the worst boxer in all of MMA, blah, 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 blah. That's the only reason why he won. That's a stupid argument. The reason why it's stupid is boxing fans can make the argument that Jake Paul is the worst boxer in all of professional boxing, but yet he knocked out Ben Askren. So you see how that argument falls apart about Ben Askren having the worst hands? It falls apart really, really fast. On top of that, there's another very big issue that I heard a lot of MMA fans saying why they believe Ben Askren could win. Because he's tough, because he's durable, because he could take a beating. Before he got a majority of his takedowns, he was walking through punches like they were nothing, absorbing them and then taking the guys down. Well, this Ben Askren that I just saw in this boxing ring was so lost, so out of his element, looked like a beached whale, that he couldn't even take the first hard hit that hit him. Literally, he got dropped by the first clean shot. And it wasn't like he got hit by an uppercut, which is much harder. It wasn't like he got hit by an overhand right, which is much harder. It wasn't like he got clipped by a very close hook, which is much harder. He got hit by the weakest, in my opinion, power punch that you can throw, a straight right. And that's what he got clipped by, and he couldn't take it. So that brings up the question, how durable are these MMA fighters really? I think about Conor McGregor and Jose Aldo. At the time, Aldo was supposed to be one of the best MMA fighters, and Conor pretty much sparked him with one punch. Now, what did we learn whenever Conor McGregor fought Floyd Mayweather Jr.? He looked void of power. He couldn't even knock the sweat off of Mayweather's head. The point of this, that you have a guy in Jake Paul who is still on an amateurish level of boxing, just knocked out one of the most durable MMA fighters. Then you had Conor McGregor, who supposedly had lightning in his hands that could knock out MMA fighters, couldn't even hurt Floyd Mayweather Jr. So I have a real question to how durable these MMA fighters are and how much of a punch they can actually take, because the evidence isn't looking too well for them. Now, again, you could argue that Ben Askren is not the best boxer. It's a valid argument. But what you cannot argue is how durable he has been in MMA. What you can't argue is how much punishment he's been able to take in MMA. And you can't argue that the first punch that Jake Paul landed on him sent him straight on his fucking head, not even on his ass. He went head first like he was diving into water. That's how bad it affected him. When he got up, I thought he could continue, but I have seen footage of another camera angle to where he was stumbling even after he got an extra 6 or 7 seconds of the referee telling Jake Paul to go to the neutral corner, which is what you're supposed to do in boxing when you knock somebody down. So if these MMA fighters truly want to fight Jake Paul, and they don't understand that boxing is a completely different world than MMA, the way that you stand, the way that you punch, the way that you attack, the way that you move, everything is different. If you don't believe it's different, listen to Frank Mir talk about it as he lost to Steve Cunningham. He got a firsthand lesson. The fact of the matter is, this is not so much about boxing versus MMA. Because the fact of the matter is, an MMA fighter in a boxing ring stands no chance at beating any boxer of any quality. To the point of where you have an elite fighter like Ben Askren get beat by Jake Paul, who is at the bottom level of boxing at this moment. Period. You can say what you want about, oh, well, it does not matter. 19 wins, 2 losses, took multiple punches to the face, multiple kicks. I know Masvidal knocked him out with a knee in like 6 seconds, so that's a flying knee, harder than a punch. But this guy has taken abuse after abuse after abuse in MMA and found a way to walk through it with even smaller gloves on. That's another thing. He was being hit by guys in 4-ounce gloves, and he was absorbing it, taking it. He gets in there with Jake Paul, who's wearing 10-ounce gloves, and goes diving headfirst into the ground. It's a different world. When you've got guys who are proficient, who know how to throw their hands, it's completely different than being hit by an MMA fighter. I'm going to say it right now. Even Ngannou, who looks devastating in MMA, let him go over there and fight Tyson Fury, or who's most recently been calling him out, Dillian White, and watch how his power looks like it's non-existent. These guys do not throw punches like boxers. When they hit boxers, they have very little effect on boxers because boxers are used to guys hitting them way harder with their hands. And when these guys get hit by guys who are trained in boxing, the punches are way more precise. They're way more pinpointed on the right places to hit. They're way more clean than what they're used to being punched by. And because of that, they can't take the fucking hits. And that's what I saw here. I picked Jake Paul to win by third, fourth round knockout. I thought, because of the MMA fans, that Ben Askren was going to be a lot more durable than what it was. What I learned was exactly what I've been saying for a long time now. MMA fighters, even the best of them, as a boxer, a former boxer watching them, and somebody who enjoys watching boxing, when I see them box each other, when I see their stand-up, it gives me anxiety because it's so bad. From the way that they rotate their hips, to the way that they're firing, where their hands are coming from, everything that they do leads me to believe that they don't know how to throw truly hard punches when compared to elite level boxers. And again, you've got a guy in Jake Paul who's not even elite, and I'm not trying to pretend that he is, because you get a cruiserweight against him, he's going to have some real problems. Real problems. So I'm not trying to make Jake Paul out more than what he is, but I think he is exposing that these MMA fighters that you think are durable, they're not actually used to taking real punches. And Tyron Woodley, I would advise you to tread water carefully when you over there talking to Love. Because if you try to box with him, he is going to knock you out. I can promise you, Tyron, you will get sparked. You will get slept. I do not care what you want in UFC. You gas after about 3 rounds, which is only 15 minutes. You gas in most of your fights that I've ever seen you fight in. Love will dance around your ass and box your fucking head off. You will get knocked out. In an octagon, yes, you could probably more than likely beat him. In an octagon, yes, Ben Askren could probably more than likely beat Logan Paul. However, even in an octagon, if guys who are very good with their hands catch these MMA fighters, I don't think they can take the punch. What comes to my mind is Ray Mercer versus Tim Sylvia, I think his name was, big tall dude, ex-UFC champion. Ray Mercer hit him one time, put his ass to sleep instantly, because they're not used to being hit by guys who actually know how to throw punches, especially guys who are knockout artists from boxing who know how to throw punches. And that's what I see. That's what I gathered from this. I know Jake Paul called out Nate Diaz. Nate Diaz is another guy that everybody says is real durable. If they fight and Jake Paul knocks him out in the first, second, or third round, if he gets knocked out like Ben Askren off the first clean, hard punch, I'm officially saying it, that MMA fighters, they can't take fucking punches. Because as much as I don't want to talk badly about Ben Askren, when you've been in combat sports for as long as he has, it's embarrassing to get knocked out in 1 minute and 30 seconds of the first round against a guy who's never even fought a real professional boxer. You are literally fighting a guy on the very bottom level of amateur boxing skills, because that's where he's at in his career. So for Jake Paul moving forward, Jake, you're fighting the right type of fights. These are the type of fights that you should be fighting. If you were in the amateurs, you would be fighting guys a lot worse than Ben Askren for your first couple of fights. If you were in the professionals, 9 times out of 10, you would be fighting a guy who's 0-1, 0-3. They could be 5-20. I've seen boxers fight guys who are 10-50 before in their first come-up fights. I think if this is something you really want to do, Jake, you do have flaws. You got a good bit of flaws. But if you keep doing what you're doing and move the way that you move, you may be able to do something. You're not there yet. You need more fights. I'm thinking you probably need you need to be a lot more active first off if you're going to do this for real. You need to be fighting once every 3 months at this point in your career. And you need to be fighting guys on this level and slowly stepping up. But if you can fight once every three months, so potentially 4 times in a year, then I would say around his somewhere between 10 to 15 fights is when he needs to start fighting legitimate, decent amateur boxers turning pro. The only reason why I'm saying that is if you don't know boxing, you need to understand. He has got to be moved very slowly because he should not be a professional. He should still be an amateur. Being that he only had 1 amateur fight against a guy who never had amateur fights, being that he came and fought a YouTuber who had never boxed before, fought a professional basketball player in Nate Robinson who had never fought before in boxing, and then now Ben Askren, who's never fought before in boxing, he's got to be moved this way because as promising as his skills look at the level that he's at, if you get an amateur boxer who's had 20, 30, 40 fights with very little losses, they'll more than likely dance circles around him because he's still got a lot of room to improve. But for all the people who say he can't fight, he can't box, y'all are delusional. Y'all are delusional. You're angered by your hate of him. That's what it is. Whether you like him or not, the boy can box. And where he's at the level he's at, he looks good doing it. That's all I got to say about it. And if he wants to box, I don't find no issues with it. Him making the money that he makes, I don't get mad at that. I don't think he's taken away from fighters' mouths. Regis Prograis just made $850,000 because of Jake Paul. I believe that's his highest pay ever. So he just got a good boxer paid more than he's ever been paid before. So no, Jake Paul's not bad for the sport. What these other boxers need to do is figure out how to grow their brand, make more people like them so they can make the same type of money, because at the end of the day, you make money off of putting asses in seats, not off your skills alone. If you can't put asses in seats, you don't sell tickets. If you can't sell tickets, you don't make money. Because Jake Paul had already such a big following, he sells tickets, he puts asses in seats or makes people buy pay-per-views that are $50. That's not cheap, especially right now with everything going on in the world and people losing their jobs. And because of that, he deserves what he's getting paid, period. Now, to conclude this long video, Jake Paul, keep doing what you're doing. If you want to keep fighting MMA fighters, go for it, because at the end of the day, no matter how good they are in the octagon, 9 times out of 10, they actually have less boxing experience than you with the 3 years that, if that is true, with the 3 years you put in. Just don't get lazy. Keep training like it's your full-time job, and you'll keep being successful against these MMA fighters, and the MMA fans are just going to keep getting butt hurt, and then they're going to eventually realize that MMA fighting and boxing are completely different, and MMA fighters stand no chance in the boxing ring against skilled boxers. Again, to the people listening, I'm not saying Jake Paul is a skilled boxer, but if Jake Paul can beat Ben Askren, imagine what a Usyk would do. That's all I got to say. Thank y'all for watching. Don't forget, leave a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. And also leave a comment. I respond to everybody. Don't be scared. Tell me how I'm wrong. If you like MMA, tell me how I'm wrong. If you disagree with what I said, tell me how I'm wrong. I'll respond. We don't have to agree, but we can conversate about it.